Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Christensen,
I'm Coffee Brown.
and welcome to episode 37 of
Don't Die Dumb. So, Pete, I hear you're not. We're going to miss next week. Is that right?
Yeah, I have to fly across the country, which I'm not nuts about. Now, don't worry. I'm not going to do a bunch of, 30-year-old airline jokes. Yeah, the guy was yelling, "Don't fly close to the sun. You'll burn your wings," and that was the pilot, that kind of things. But lately, I mean, come on. They hit a bakery truck. They ran over a guy. Have you ever gotten off an airplane and say, "Yeah, we got in a car accident"? You know, when they taxi across to Newark from New York or something? Planes are going down faster than a Kardashian at a bachelor party. I worry about. I have a fear of heights. I put on platform shoes. I get a nosebleed. I'm not nuts about flying, but yeah, I'm going to miss a week. I won't be here for that. But let us talk about social reductionism. Explain what that is.
Scientific reductionism.
Oh, both of those. We'll start with the scientific one first, because they sound overly complicated.
No, it's actually extremely simple. But one of the criticisms we get a lot about science is that scientists are reductionists, meaning scientists think that you can study a mouse by studying its cells or its elements or something. And that's a mistake, but I get why it's so. Some scientists do exactly that. I know people who have spent their entire career studying like one enzyme in the leg muscle of a fruit fly. But while it is true that one part of science is to break everything down into component parts, it gets followed up by reassembling all these concepts and ideas, and that is called, so the reductionist part is analysis, the breaking of things into their components and studying the components. But the discipline writ large then recombines all that in what is called synthesis. And so you take the concepts you get from looking at the one enzyme in the leg of a fruit fly, and later on it becomes a drug. For example, studies like this are how we learn about myostatin, which breaks down muscle when you don't use it. And myostatin blockers, therefore, can preserve muscle in later life.
Well, what's the big deal? Doesn't everybody do that? You take your car to the mechanic, he doesn't look at the whole car and say, "Oh, gee, what can the problem be?" He goes through the car and finds out exactly what it can be. He breaks it down and then reassembles it properly.
Exactly.
Don't we all do that?
Exactly right. We all do that, but when science does it, it becomes one of the flags that people use to criticize science. Because fundamentally, a lot of people are just uncomfortable with science. So I hope that through this podcast, we can make them more comfortable with it.
Give me an example of that, them criticizing from...
Scientists don't know anything. They're just reductionists. All scientists know is atoms and molecules, but they don't know anything about real life.
No, okay. And it is easier these days to promote magic and conspiracies in science. Science is too complicated for some people. It's complicated for me,
So,
but that doesn't mean I abandon it.
A lot of times people actually prefer a narrative that at some level they know to be false because their friends like that narrative. It's part of they've made it part of their subculture. We talked before about the person who thought that only aliens could have built pyramids because we don't know even today how to build them. Engineers today wouldn't know how to do it. And the fact is, yeah, there's a whole cottage industry and people showing you exactly how pyramids are built. Just look on the YouTube, how are the pyramids built, and you can find people doing that. But when I try to show people these videos, no, we know how the pyramids are built. Take a look at this. I've actually seen them do this. And I realized very belatedly, if you're part of the aliens built the pyramids things, aliens are real, aliens are here among us, there's a whole cluster of people who go, "Oh, finally, you're one of us." And if I take that away from them by simply showing them, no, it's pretty easy to build a pyramid. It takes a lot of manpower, but it's not an engineering challenge. It's basically a big pile of rocks with some holes in it. You can strip them of their membership in the club of people who know secrets. This is how conspiracy theories work too.
Well, understand this. People don't like to admit when they don't know something. I talked to a friend, a woman I'm dating, I won't mention her name, Susan, and I told her, I said, I bought some Demitasse. And she said, why? I said, Demitasse. And rather than say, what is that? She said, she wouldn't admit that she didn't know what it was.
I don't
you know.
either. What is Demitasse?
Little cups. you know.
Oh, okay, the Demitasse cups. All right.
Well, people don't like to admit when they're wrong or when they don't know. And for good reason. I grew up in the Midwest where people thought if you told them, well, I was wrong, you're right, that was weak. That was a sign of weakness. And they couldn't wait to take advantage of that. And they love to blame people.
Now, here is a huge difference between how science works and how non-scientists think. And this is a big difference, and I can see where it creates some conflict. In ordinary life, faith is prioritized, and I do not just mean religious faith. I mean faith that your mother can detect a fever by doing this, or faith that chicken soup is good for colds, or faith that cold weather causes colds. Now, faith in the things that are shared beliefs within a culture binds us together, and science gets its power from doubt. So in ordinary life, admitting I'm wrong about something can be seen as a weakness. But in science, it can be seen as opening a door to new discoveries. So in my world, recognizing that I've made an error is an opportunity to level up. But in the world of shared culture, it can be a moment when you're about to abandon what the rest of the tribe has agreed to believe. And so it can become socially threatening. That's a giant difference. Science gets its power from doubt, not from faith. One of the common criticisms of science is, oh, well, scientists think they know everything. They're so dogmatic. Actually, the world of science is all about challenging literally everything you and everybody else believes and testing it.
A scientist is like a detective. People say, oh, I'm a suspect. No, he's not questioning you because you're a suspect. He or she is questioning you to eliminate you as a suspect. And science peels away each level, right?
That's right. We look for things that stand up to testing, and we stress test every idea, every concept, every assertion in science. And it is kind of obnoxious. So you say, this actually happened within my family. This is literally like how my family worked. Wow, what a great day. Really? Define a great day. Great for who? Oh, you think it's nice that it's sunny? Maybe the farmers want some rain today. Who are you to say it's a nice day? And you're off on 2 hours of debate about what it means to say this is a nice day and whose call it is and stuff. So I get how that can be a pain in the patootie for somebody who just wants to say what a beautiful day it is.
Right now our nation's divided because a lot of people they want to follow their heart instead of their brain. And because of that, if you tell them you're wrong, and that's bad, and I'll tell you why that's bad. Because most of them, there's a 20% of cult members, forget it. But the other 60 to 80%, they're not cult members. What they are, they're good people, hardworking people that have been sold a bill of goods. So instead of saying you're wrong, if you say something like, I can understand why you see that. I used to make this mistake. I would tell people, no, here's what's really happening. And that insulted them. I didn't realize it. But when I said, oh, it's perfectly natural, you should think that, because there's been so many UFO sightings. But let me say this, the media is all saying, if there were UFOs, we would have found them. There's a lot of things they don't find. So I can understand why you feel that way. That gives them an out. And I don't think we're giving people an out, because right now a lot of people, and isn't it a shame that people won't vote against something bad until it hits them in the wallet? Once it hits them in the purse or the wallet, they go, well, I can't vote for them anymore. There are more important things than your money. But right now people are falling away from that. But treat them like dirt and they'll go back to the cult.
If Americans are going to pride ourselves on being a moral country, we need to recognize that the word morality implies that you make sacrifices for greater goods, that you sometimes extend yourself on behalf of others, or that you'll take a small hit so somebody else doesn't take a bigger hit. Morality means committing to some degree of sacrifice. Everybody can do what's easy. If eating pie were a moral act, it would be easy to get people to behave in a moral way. But if sharing your pie is the moral act, people start to flinch.
We're living in a time of exponential change. Everything's changing really fast. And because of that, people are worried and they cling to old values that, when you go back to those days, aren't true. Now, one of the things, the quandaries that I have, is that some nations like Australia are having social media control. And China, I think, too, you can't have any social media account until you're, I believe, 12 or 13. The problem is that social media is moving so fast. When you have the government controlling social media, how do you know they're not controlling it in a bad way to brainwash you?
Well, right now, the efforts that I'm aware of are mostly about limiting access to social media. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an interesting problem. This is a tough one, but at the moment, I think that it's correct that we want to limit what parts of the web and social media younger people are exposed to. And younger is itself an interesting word, since our prefrontal cortex doesn't finish developing until we're about 25. So honestly, I would set a lot of these benchmarks at 25, but I realize the rest of the world thinks that's way too old, way too late. But, protecting teenagers and middle schoolers from things like pornography or racism,
violence,
or the dark web, hyper-violent stuff. I think that's a good idea. Or even just influencers who are filling their heads with bad advice. Pro tip, everything with 2 X's in it is wrong. Fiber maxing, protein maxing, looks maxing, max maxing, mac and cheese maxing. Everything with maxing in it, 2 X's, is wrong, because it is almost always wrong that if a little of something is good, a lot must be a lot better. There's always a sweet spot. And maxing completely misses that point. This is the kind of thing you get exposed to young. You're not a real man unless you have a Chad jaw and you have this chest to waist ratio and you use women as objects. Or young girls. You're not a real girl unless you have bigger breasts than that, or unless guys look at you in a certain way, and so on, right? These toxic messages, not just pornography and violence, but toxic messages about how to be in the world, are things I think we should protect younger people from. Europe and Australia are trying to do that. They're trying to limit access for younger people. It's a tricky problem, though. Should you use credit card or your driver's license to access things like adult entertainment? Well, that kind of puts you on a register. But how are you going to do it? They've tried things like facial recognition, but folks just hold up a picture of an older person. So that doesn't seem to be the answer. One way maybe might be some kind of card with encrypted code on it that says, I'm over 21. And that will let you into parts of the web that without it you can't get onto. That wouldn't be bulletproof, but it would be better maybe than what we have now. And it doesn't track you further. It just lets you into those parts of the web. So a while ago, they were trying to adopt a .xxx web domain. I'm not really sure why that got shot down. I know that the left didn't like it and the right did. This is one where sounded like a good idea to me. I'm not sure what the argument against it was.
Well, right now, our state, New Mexico, sued Elon Musk because he was letting racist and violent things open to children on and he's threatening to get rid of Facebook and Instagram.
Fine. Sooner they're gone, the better.
No kids care about
Facebook. Go,
Elon. No kids care about Facebook. They all have Instagram because they lip sync songs and dance to them so they can pretend they're a star, But does he really think people are going to care? You don't think kids will find another website? They'll be on YouTube filming,
And also Elon Musk has told some flat out lies. I mean, his Grok has. Things like there was no Holocaust, There's a genocide against whites in South Africa. Elon Musk is the greatest at fill in the blank. That was a hilarious one. For a while there, when you would put in who is the greatest, it doesn't matter what you put after it. The answer was always Elon Musk. Pirate, thief,
Yeah.
pope, whatever, you know.
Let me digress a little, as long as we're talking about liars. Trump's grandfather ran a whorehouse and was a Klan member. His father was an anti-Semite, and he was a slumlord. Now, you see the lineage here, and now the evangelicals have built. And what is the first commandment? Thou shalt not have false gods before me. Thou shalt not worship graven images. Moses came down, broke the first set of commandments on a golden calf. Now they've made a golden statue and worshipped it on Mar-a-Lago, and they have plans to build more of these. They should have put a cheeseburger in each hand. By the way, the statue is identical to the statue that Saddam Hussein had, that we tore down when we broke
Yes,
down
it's
that country.
very similar. And I hope it has a similar fate in the future.
When Trump went to China, I've never seen this country look more weak. When Xi came here, Trump met him on the airport with a red carpet. When he went there, Xi wouldn't meet him at the airport. When he got on the red carpet to Xi, he kissed his hand.
Trump
And then-
kissed Xi's hand.
Yeah, and then Xi warned him, he threatened him, don't stop us if we want to do military action against Taiwan. In response, Trump told him what a great leader he was for ruling with an iron fist. I've never seen a country look so weak.
Honestly, if I were China now is when I would seize Taiwan because Trump is such a suck
Yeah,
up.
he's a sap and they know it. But he did come home and say, we have 200 Boeing aircraft that we're going to sell to China now. And immediately, China's spokesperson said, we never agreed to that. We got nothing on that. The other thing that makes us look so weak, he got us into a war with Iran. He doesn't know how to get out of it. The whole country is suffering financially. So he goes to China to try and get him to solve it? What? Could you look weaker than, I can't fix this, fix it for me, will you, Daddy?
You know, that the whole economy thing, like, well, Trump is the one, if what you care about is the economy, Trump is the guy. Well, let's think about this for a second. Biden inherited terrible inflation because of COVID, which had been just idiotically mismanaged by Trump. I mean, like, to the point of sabotaging his own country. Literally to the point of sabotage. It was that badly managed. And economists were astonished at the soft landing that Biden was able to accomplish. So basically, we're carping at the pilot because he broke the wheels when he landed, but nobody on board died. It is true that Biden had higher inflation than Trump did.
But not
But it
now.
was due to Trump and to COVID. But the last year of Biden's administration was lower inflation than the first year of Trump's current administration. Now, Trump ran on a platform of lowering inflation partly by avoiding international adventures. But while Biden's inflation was inflicted on us by COVID and prior mishandling, Trump's inflation is inflicted on us by tariffs and by starting not one but multiple foreign wars. Also, the people who voted for Trump tend to be America First people. We're the greatest country in the world. But we've squandered our reputation by alienating every ally. We were the one world superpower until Trump came in, and now we've alienated all of our allies, destroyed all of our alliances, and weirdly, the Republicans have become the party of Red China and Russia. How did that happen?
And oddly enough, right after Trump comes back, he's going to pull troops out of Europe, and Xi is meeting with Putin.
So the loss of our status as a world power, the current inflation that we're experiencing, and the overall shame of our country are all self-inflicted.
Now, geoengineering, to move on a bit here. I believe in geoengineering, but the problem is in the past, we did things like put steps on the Columbus River to let the seals, to let the salmon go down. But it also let the seals come up and eat all the salmon. But the problem with geoengineering in the past, they didn't know. Now we're much more educated on what goes on in the world and explain what geoengineering is. And I think it could be a good thing.
So geoengineering is when we take on projects on an absolutely massive scale. For example, we could consider building gigantic water pipelines like we now have oil and gas pipelines. We could build water pipelines so that we drain the areas of the country that flood into the areas that are experiencing drought on an ongoing basis. And both of those problems will become worse as climate change continues to heat up. So that kind of makes sense to me, but the world of large-scale, well, of human projects in general, is full of unintended consequences. So robust engineering, and other examples, by the way, would include things like giant mylar sails in space that shade parts of the Earth, or aerosols into the atmosphere that reduce some of the absorption of sunlight on the planet.
In some of the South American nations, what they did was they put up plastic piping and they put up netting on the top of their mountain. It catches the moisture that normally the clouds that wouldn't make it over the mountain comes on the plastic pipes and they have fresh water. And it was a massive project, a cheap project, but the peasants all got together and did it because scientists told them how to do it.
But for robust engineering, we need to think a little further than a year down the road. So creating rain now at the price of drought later, for example, isn't going to be a good plan. Or protecting ourselves now with air conditioning and water pipes that cross the continent isn't going to help us if we wipe out the entire environment. We're still all going to die horribly and within this century. So geoengineering, one problem with it is that it's short term. The other is that robust engineering accounts for the fact that we always get surprises. We always get surprises. We have to act. We're in a hole now that we have to dig out of. But we have to design every project such that it can be modified as the problems begin to accumulate. And by the way, one of the things we're going to start talking about more on this podcast is cognitive errors. And one of the common cognitive errors is, well, I want to do this fix, but there's this problem. I guess we better not. You're always going to trade one set of problems for another, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter what you do. It means you want to get a set of problems you can live with, like, for example, it's expensive or it requires maintenance, or we have to spend more now in order to create a really stable project for the future, as opposed to problems you cannot live with. Well, we'll just ignore the future and let technology solve its own problems, and then we wind up with runaway global warming and that sort of thing. So not every set of problems is the same. It is true that you're going to trade one set of problems for another, but some sets of problems are far more sustainable or tolerable or kinder to our children than other sets of problems are.
There's money in recycling, speaking of problems. France is taking bottles, plastic bottles, arranging them into colors, and then grinding them up and heat pressurizing them and using them for bricks. And they're colorful, they're opaque, but the sun can come through them if you want. And it seems to be working very good. One of the ways to preserve what we have now is to make money off recycling. Now, California is putting solar panels over their aqueducts that go over the state, so it doesn't evaporate so quick. It saves water, and it creates energy. These are great things if we just do more of it.
We've seen how vulnerable the energy grid is. And by the way, solar panels were invented here in America, but then we sort of walked away from them whistling, and we allowed China to take over the solar panel manufacturing for the world. That would have been a huge profit maker for us. Solar power, renewable energy now is about as cheap as gas, but it doesn't have all the consequences. And by the way, fossil fuels are a lot more expensive when you factor in the stuff we don't count now, like the air pollution, the heating of the climate, having to do mitigation strategies and things like that. So actually, alternative energy is already much cheaper than fossil fuels. People complain about the government supporting alternative energy, but who do you think created the fossil fuel industry? That was government funded to begin with.
Now, to tie these subjects in, Taiwan makes 94% of the world's semiconductors. Biden, under the Build Back Better plan, was going to make companies that made semiconductors here. If China gets a hold of that, do you know what a stranglehold they'll have on America? This is insane.
And they've already made that squeeze with rare earths. So we know that if they can bottleneck semiconductors in order to create leverage, they will do that in the blink of an eye, because they've already done that with the precursors, which is to say the rare earths.
So the bottom line, we can't convince people. Right now there's a big push for the oil industry. Our present administration paid $10 billion of taxpayer money to stop a windmill project off the East Coast that was 80% completed. The frick, we can't convince them unless they can make money off it. But there are ways to make money off recycling. I really think it's important.
We're treating some things as political that are not. They're simply physics. Global warming is not political. You can dismantle the agency that monitors global warming, as Trump has done. You can fire all the top scientists, as Trump has done. You can put a blindfold on. That will not stop global warming. That'll just mean it hits harder because you don't see it coming. If I ever have to fight Mike Tyson, I'm going to lose. But I'm not. My strategy isn't going to be to put on a blindfold so I won't see him coming.
Now, people think global warming means that, well, they tell me, well, we got 2 feet of snow up in Madison, Wisconsin. Don't tell me about global warming. It's more major weather events. Flooding constantly on the southeast, more droughts. Africa used to have droughts for a year and then rainy seasons. Now they have droughts for 4 years and terrible rainy seasons. The ground is so parched you can't absorb it. So now they have flooding.
I haven't been mugged this year. Don't you tell me there's crime.
Yeah, there you go. If it's not happening to you, it doesn't matter. This year is expected to be the strongest El Nino in history. El Nino brings the melting ice cap down to the south and keeps us cool. And then La Nina comes from the other direction and warms us up to give us an even keel of temperatures. That's not going to happen this year. And the fire season used to be July and August. Now it's 6 months. We're killing ourselves.
And the more that we get deforested because the forests are drying out, the worse the carbon is.
Now, people would tell me, well, what can I do about it? I have a tiny little home on a tiny little lot, just perfect for a guy with a tiny little brain. But you know what? I have 7 trees that I planted, and they're all doing well. That'll make a canopy. My ex-wife lives in Phoenix, Arizona, 110 degrees, 90 days in a row. Her backyard, she filled it with plants and small trees. You go in her backyard, and I swear to God, it's 10 to 20 degrees cooler. And it's like a tropical jungle, only it's cool. You can do these things. You can help on your own if you want,
Yeah, one of the best things we can all do is plant trees. And planting trees around houses helps a lot to cool them, especially deciduous trees, because they have leaves in the summer when you want shade, shelter from the heat. But they drop their leaves in the winter when you want the sun to warm up your house.
And don't forget, the Audubon Society, they'll send you some saplings for free in the mail. Tiny, but they'll work. And they'll send you the right ones for your area, absolutely free. Write them, email them, find out. I'm telling you the truth.
Not to be confused with the Audubon Society, which will send you fast cars.
Yeah, no, don't do that. So anyhow, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. I'm Pete Christensen.
I'm Coffee Brown.
And as always, don't forget,
Don't die dumb.